This is a closeout report for education resources, which was a Fund 5 proposal in the challenge Catalyst Value Onboarding. So Catalyst Value Onboarding was all about helping people learn about and get involved with the Catalyst ecosystem. In terms of our proposal outcomes, the first thing we did is kind of execute what we intended to do, which was to aggregate all of the resources together and make a nice bit of documentation, and also create an initial timeline calendar. And we put that onto projectcatalyst.org. And then after that, we started to analyze some of the issues that exist from the Catalyst team doing this process, the process that they were doing themselves, and also some of the solutions that we were trying to attempt in the community. And how can we then move that into a better, longer-term solution? In doing so, we then compared some different solutions and then eventually came to the conclusion of Gitbook came out as being a really effective solution to use in the longer term. And some of the reasons for that is it had a nice, easy editing interface, had the nested structure, formatting, and media capabilities. It handles open source really well, so you could push any of that documentation into a GitHub repository. It had the longevity in that it could handle translations, and also it had some basic permissions for multiple roles and contributors. So both the Catalyst team and the community could collaborate in a single kind of tool and with the right permissions to maintain and update that over time. In terms of the timeline of outcomes, initially we had the resources and the timeline within the first few months we'd executed. And then it was really the analysis looking for that longer term solution that we released in September 21 on our YouTube. And the suggestion for Gitbook as a more long-term solution that the Catalyst team could adopt was sent more formally by email in October 2021. It was around May 2023, around 20 months later, that Gitbook was finally adopted as the new documentation approach being used for Project Catalyst, which is great. And now that official documentation can be found by the Catalyst team at docs.projectcatalyst.io. In terms of the key achievements, we executed what we intended to and then identified a better approach for analysis. And it was really that analysis that helped define what made sense for the longer term, rather than stopping at the initial kind of implementation we had, which didn't really have longevity and sustainability in mind after we'd kind of experienced what it was like to work on it in the current environment. And to find this kind of better solution, we had collaboration and feedback. We had alpha town hall discussions with different people, and also one-on-one conversations in a mixture of places like Discord and Telegram. In terms of engagement, when we pushed those the calendar and resources onto our website, the projectcatalyst.org website was ranked #1 on Google for Project Catalyst for many years. It's now from like 21, 22. Now, more recently, the Catalyst team have launched their own official website, and now that has taken the #1 spot. So we were useful and beneficial to the community in that period of time where those resources were not available easily and easily to be found on Google. Subsequently, we moved those resources from our website onto a Gitbook, and that has also seen thousands of visitors for the different resources that have been aggregated there. In terms of achievements for addressing the challenges, guiding questions, we believe we've definitely helped with achieving them. So how do new people learn about Catalyst, and how can we provide a central source of constantly updated information? So our initial execution was a good start, but then our longer term solution of making sure that people who are maintaining and operating the process had the right tool for dealing with that, being Gitbook, really helps to solve those two kind of challenges, questions. And now it's been adopted, we can safely say that the intentions of the challenge have been addressed. In terms of some key learnings, we definitely found that having quality resources in a single location really helped with creating these right outcomes of what we were looking for. And that is that clarity and simplicity of having it all in one place and easily being able to traverse through that with any kind of level of complexity of the nesting. Having simple management so that those who are working on it, like the Catalyst team, could easily kind of change it and maintain it. You didn't have to be a developer to make changes. It had that consistency that it could be used for a long period of time, and that people would just know exactly where to go to find out about what's the current policies, guidelines, and information about the ecosystem. And then finally, it had that longevity. It really helps with that translation support. We found a tool that was appropriate for solving that kind of problem. So that was the first one. In terms of another key learning was documentation is definitely best suited for the people who are operating and maintaining that process. They are the ones who really understand what's happening and why changes are being made. So they are always going to be the ones who are most suited to maintaining that documentation. And that is why we're suggesting, as Catalyst team are currently the ones who are doing so, that they have an effective tool for achieving that. And they can then also invite the community members to participate in that as and when it makes sense. And then finally, there's the importance of data sources. So we had some issues with the timeline data where there would be changes in the exact dates during a fund and also between funds. A lot of things might be changing. There was no automated way or API endpoints to get that information. So it meant we were constantly making manual changes and trying to keep things up to date, which again was very difficult to maintain without those data sources available. So that then leads again to the people who are maintaining the process. It makes sense for them to either have an endpoint and API available, which I think is something the Kata team are going to be launching quite soon with the Catalyst API, or to maintain that information in their own documentation. In terms of suggestions for the things I've seen so far in the official documentation, so far it's great so far with the documentation. It'd be great to see that documentation pushed into a Git repository so it's available there as well, so people can make pull requests and fork the code. And use it how they like to. The second thing it'd be great to see, over whether it's now or sometime in the future, is to start exploring incentives for supporting maintenance and changes to the documentation, whether that's something like the Catalyst contributor model that I've been suggesting for quite a while now, or something similar. And then finally, it's going to be really good to keep a log of the historical changes in the documentation. So whatever changes happen in Fund 10, when things change again in Fund 11, making sure all of those historical things and action points that happen for that fund are kept in the documentation and are easy to find, so people can easily see where we've come from and where we're going to in terms of the progression and evolution of the different guidelines, policies, and technical changes in the ecosystem. And finally, some of the links. So we have the Catalyst contributors kind of documentation we have there, which has all of the Gitbook changes we made, and that was kind of the initial suggestion we pushed over to the Catalyst team. We have the education resources analysis, which is really the bulk of the value in determining what is that kind of long-term solution look like that has now finally been adopted. And then finally, any of our resources are also available on GitHub. And that's it. Thanks for listening for this one.